An ESPN insider just revealed some massive Cowboys moves incoming as they are preparing for something huge. We talk about this latest ESPN article talking about the Dallas Cowboys and their cap space plus plans for free agency, according to Jerry Jones, all here today on Cowboys Digest. Welcome, everybody. I'm Jace Andrews. I appreciate you tuning in to today's show and hope you're having a wonderful day wherever you might be. Now, we've got a crazy show here talking about cap space, talking about moves the Cowboys can make to save cap space, and talking about what the expectations are for the Cowboys with that saved cap space. Lots to go into. Todd Archer released a full article, and we are going to break it down. The first thing we have to know, though, is where the Cowboys stand right now. According to Over the Cap, the Cowboys are $39 million right now over the cap, in $1 million there. So I think that there is ways to restructure this, and there is a lot for them to do, which is exactly what Todd Archer said. And he started his article with an interesting headline, saying the Cowboys' free agency decisions begin with George Pickens. Now, we'll get into what that plan is later, but there's basically two options on the table. They can pay George Pickens now that big-time wide receiver money and keep him for the next 3 or 4 years. Or they can franchise tag him, which would save them, in theory, some money this year, but would probably have him being gone by next season. Now, that's not confirmed or denied, but there's a lot of things we can discuss with that and what the Cowboys would do if they don't get him, if they do, all still things to come here on the show. Now, before we get into the rest of today's show, this video is brought to you by Kalshi. If you download Kalshi using the link in the description and use code DIGESTNFL, you're going to get $20 when you trade your first 100. Kalshi is the largest prediction market in the United States, and on their platform, you can trade yes or no on real-life events, sports, selections, news, pretty much anything. Now, whether you're in California, Texas, or anywhere across the country, Kalshi is now live in all 50 states. For sports fans, we can trade on game outcomes, playoff chances, or player performances, all on a regulated market where you can cash out at any time. Right now, we're of course looking at the College Football Championship this Monday. And if you think the underdog is going to win in Miami, they got a 26% odd. You can trade 100 to earn $385. It's genuinely the smarter way to use your sports or news knowledge, and you can close positions whenever you want. Again, download Kalshi using that link in the description, and don't forget to use code DIGESTNFL to get your $20 bonus. Okay, so George Pickens is the big deal here, but there's a lot more that we have to start with, and I think he has some interesting points as he starts his article. We first start with this. Away from the cameras, Jerry Jones has mentioned the possibility to bust the budget as he chases his stated goal of being the owner with the most Super Bowl wins when he is done. Jones right now is 3 behind New England Patriots owner Robert Kraft's 6. This is a statement we have heard multiple times from Jerry Jones. I want to be the best. I want to have the best, but he never spins like the best or makes the right decisions, and I feel like in some ways he's too overbearing in a lot of different situations. So if he wants to bust the budget, that's all right, but in the NFL there is cap space to figure out, and that's where Todd Archer goes next. The Cowboys have contracts totaling about $330 million in cap room. Some NFL cap projections are between $295 million and $305 million. So conservatively, the Cowboys will have to come up with $30 million just to get under the cap space. If they place the wide receiver tag on unrestricted free agent George Pickens, that's another $28 million or so that hits the cap immediately. So that's the first option. They can save $30 million of cap, but they're going to have to save at least $50 million if they, in theory, want to put the franchise tag on George Pickens. Now, is that hard? In some situations, yes, but in this situation, not. Todd Archer says this: fear not, because the Cowboys can create upward of $100 million in salary cap room by restructuring the contracts of QB Dak Prescott, wide receiver CeeDee Lamb, Tyler Smith, Osa Odighizuwa, Deron Bland, and tight end Jake Ferguson, if they reduce their base salaries down to the minimum, end quote. Now, this is all well and good and very true. That can 100% happen. They can save a lot of money. The problem becomes past this year, because we can look at Dak Prescott's contract and the breakdown of salary and what he's going to get paid, but if you break it down, his contract becomes overwhelmingly expensive for not just 2027, but all the way into potentially the 2030s. So that being said, this is a good thought in theory, But at the same time, you have to think it from a logistical standpoint and say, okay, one problem is you're going to be spending a ton of money then in a couple years on Dak Prescott's contract. And there's also some guaranteed money in there that you don't really want to move past that. Here's what I mean by it. As we go to the next report, Todd Archer says this. Then there is DaRon Bland. He is coming off his second foot surgery in as many years. Do the Cowboys want to add to his future cap numbers when there is an injury concern? Bland's fully guaranteed money ends after the season, giving the Cowboys the possibility of an easier out in 2027 should they not restructure his deal now. This deal came this past season. It was a 4-year deal. The first 2 years were guaranteed. Again, I think in theory, it's smart because guaranteed money, especially for a guy who has been injured for the past couple seasons, is hard to push on the past couple times. So that's another situation where it's like, those are two contracts that would be a little bit harder to restructure. However, in the same time and in the same thought, I don't think it's that big of a concern to push some of the guaranteed money down the line. But they also don't just have to worry about George Pickens. So they have to save $50 million right away for the franchise tag. They would have to save more to continue on and try and get guys like Javonte Williams, who is a very big piece of this Cowboys offseason. Now, there are other running backs out there. In fact, earlier today we talked about Travis Etienne Jr. But at the same time, Javonte is a guy who's been in the organization and somebody who the organization has mentioned they want to keep. Over 1,300 yards total this season, 35 receptions, and 13 touchdowns. It's something you want to keep on your roster. Well, he's not the only one. You also want to try and keep guys like Jadeveon Clowney or Brandon Aubrey, guys who are on your roster that you're also going to need to extend. Now, their contracts are not going to be as lucrative as, say, George Pickens. But at the same time, when you look at George Pickens, I think pretty much everybody can agree. The franchise tag sounds great, and that is probably the most likely option. But we would all rather have a contract, right? Now, let me know your thoughts in the comments section. If you'd rather not have the contract for George Pickens, then I'm curious. Let me know in the comments. But I would rather have a 4-year contract labeled, signed, and done. But with that being a thought in mind, you got to think about all the other intricacies. So let's just go through three players that I just mentioned. Jadeveon Clowney and his market value is just a 1-year deal worth about $5.7 million. Continuing on that, you have a 3-year, $22 million market value for Javonte, which means about $7.3 million per year. And then, of course, if we were to sign George Pickens, not get him on the franchise tag, actually sign him, his contract value is north of $120 million for 4 years, meaning $30+ million a year. And it might require more, just simply because the wide receiver market has increased. And he is the best wide receiver on the market this offseason, if he is even allowed to get to the market if he's not franchise tagged. That all comes down to a lot of money to spend that you're already having to figure out. In fact, in that little 3-player contract, that's $43.6 million. And as we just stated, the Cowboys are $30 million under the cap. So you add these two numbers together because you got to get under it, and you're going to pay this still. You're talking $75 million almost in money that you are going to have to clear just to get this, just to get the contract for Javonte, Jadeveon, and for George Pickens. And there's other people, like I said, there's Brandon Aubrey, there's TJ Bass, there's guys on the offensive line depth-wise that they want to have back. So for what I'm trying to get to here is Cowboys free agency has always been a letdown. And Jerry Jones had an interesting quote this year saying this: I don't want to sound optimistic by saying we're going to be active in free agency and then disappoint and say that we weren't. But if we have an opportunity in free agency, and if we have more than one opportunity, we're going to take advantage of the fact that we're in a better shape today to play free agency than we thought we might be. And so we're going to use it. Long-winded way of saying, yeah, I might do something, but also I might not. If the opportunity presents itself, sure. But the opportunity has to present itself. And with the money at hand, the Cowboys have, in theory, just a couple of different options. And those different options rely on literally one guy. Back to the title frame, George Pickens. Because if they decide to franchise tag him, or if they decide to sign him, which is the better term, either of which I'm fine with, keeping him is a main priority for me, then you're going to be less active in free agency. But for the fans or for the people who are wanting the Cowboys to go out there and be active and sign people and get this right thing done, I understand. And the defense is not in a good spot. But you have 2 first-round draft picks. You've got picks that you can use to develop that defense and get it better, and a very good defensive draft might I add this season. And you can also sign some linebackers, that is a position of need, to some better spots. You feel good about your interior defensive line. If you can get one cornerback, one safety, you could feel comfortable with your secondary. That can all come from the draft. So my point being is this. If Jerry Jones does nothing in free agency besides gets Javonte, George, and Jadeveon and Brandon Aubrey back, I don't think I'd be too upset. Where I would be upset is if they save the money. They get under that cap space, whatever. They don't get George. They franchise tag him. And they still don't do more moves after that. I'm all for getting this good year going, and I'm all for this season being a productive one for the Cowboys. I'm all for this being something we like. But at the same time, I'm also wondering long term. And I want that 4-year contract for CeeDee because then that opens up a window in my mind. And it's hard to say that given the situation we had this season, but I still believe this team can be good next year. And maybe that's just me blaming the most of the defense was on Matt Eberflus, but at the same time, there's a lot that they can do. There's a lot that can be done in short contracts and small contracts and not signing Kenneth Murray. They can do a lot. They can save a lot, and I believe they can be a very good team next year, but it ultimately hinges on the decision of George Pickens and for the Cowboys. That's all we got for you today. We appreciate you watching. We hope you have a great rest of your day. And for now, guys, peace out.